Hello, everybody. You're listening to CKDU 88.1 FM in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I'm Jerry Katz, and you're listening to Non-Duality Talk Radio. We have 3 guests today. In the studio, sitting right next to me, is James Travers. James, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Jerry. Happy to be here as always.
You've got a couple of topics to talk about, don't you?
Well, as always, non-duality is one of them.
Oh, okay.
But particularly today, Yoga Nidra as well.
And on the phone, we'll be talking to Jen Pierre-Rich in Atlanta, Georgia. And Jen will talk about creativity, disability, and presence. And we'll also be talking to Chadwick Johnson in Sacramento. Is there a song about Sacramento? They need a song about Sacramento. We could write one right here. Chad is a father of 5. He's a new teacher on the non-duality scene. We want to start out, James, with the definition of non-duality, and then please tell us what Yoga Nidra is.
Okay, so non-duality is the true nature of being, and Yoga Nidra is a means of realizing that. That's probably the best definitions I can give you at this point.
Yoga Nidra is a way of realizing that.
Yes.
Is it hard? Is it hard to do?
Well,
make it easy.
The nature of the practice, I don't know if it's right to say easy, but it's definitely simple, and that's why it has a certain potency. Is because of its simplicity. The reason it's challenging in terms of easy or not easy is because Yoga Nidra is about relaxing. Yoga Nidra is another way of saying that the activity is about relaxing in a way that's guided by me or someone like me to help you to realize the true nature of being. Now, the practice itself is simply the practice of relaxation. And that's something that's really extraordinary, because although we say, I am relaxing, relaxing really is not something that one does. And Yoga Nidra, what that practice is it approximates deep sleep. How it connects to non-duality is, in a certain way, we could make the argument that your true nature is deep sleep. And so, like I said a moment ago, non-duality is your true nature. So if non-duality is your true nature and deep sleep is your true nature, then non-duality and deep sleep are the same thing. So the reason that these things are challenging to speak about is because they're experiential in nature. The activity of Yoga Nidra is about letting go and releasing. And what is it that lets go? It's the activity of the mind, largely, that lets go. And that's complemented by placing the body in a way that it is cared for, and it can simply relax because it's being supported. So you typically do this lying down. It's like lying in a bed or lying on a floor on a mat or some kind of supportive surface in that way. So there's nothing that's required physically. And even setting up the physical body in such a way so that it is enabled to relax and not have any kind of physical demands placed on it. Then it's just a matter of dealing with the way that other things manifest on the level of form, the activity of the mind. Can we allow the mind to fall silent? And where it differs from deep sleep is this is not deep sleep, but it approximates deep sleep in the sense that you're awake in a deep sleep-like state. So the relaxation this is the most profound relaxation known to mankind. And there are certain ways that we go about it on the very practical level. First, there's a bit of an explanation, like some of the explanation I'm giving now. And there's another aspect to it in terms of a little bit of fatigue helps the body and the mind to want to let go. So what we would do would be some stretches and things that are semi-gentle. I can't say they're absolutely gentle, but there's enough challenge there to create a slight fatigue, but you're not to be overwhelmed and things of that nature. We don't ever want to get to a place in any yoga practice where there's going to be exhaustion. So we're not exercising in that extreme, but we are exercising enough to generate a certain fatigue in the body and in the mind, so that there's a greater willingness to let go. And then the real challenge is to remain awake. So the activity is described as being relaxed yet alert. So it's like being wide awake in deep sleep.
Would this be considered a study or a discipline or a practice that's advanced compared to basic yoga?
In a certain way, it gets said to be advanced, because anyone who's practiced yoga knows that the relaxation pose at the end is very, very enjoyable, yet that can be the most challenging. And the more advanced people in yoga practice, the more advanced yoga practitioners, they will tell you that the greatest challenge in yoga practices are the silences. So the things which appear like you're doing nothing are the things that are most challenging. So the less to do means that there's less for the mind to do, and there's less for the body to do. To simply be still and to honor silence is one of the most challenging things for the average person. So the difficulty is not so much in a physical way, but in a way that most people experience in terms of the mental level, being simply quiet and accessing a quality of presence, a quality of being that is always available, yet is not normally accessed because of our busyness. So Yoga Nidra and advanced yoga practices are anything but entertainment things that keep you busy or distracted. The more advanced yoga practices are ones that give you very little to do. And that very little to do simply means that you're being with authentic being and not providing any kind of distractions or entertainment that take you away from that quality of presence, that quality of being.
And that, you mentioned that final pose in yoga where you're lying down. And
yeah, its formal name is Shavasana.
And
so Yoga Nidra is very similar to that.
So it kind of builds on that, or maybe begins with that. Sounds like it, perhaps.
In a certain way, yes, you could say that. The difference with Yoga Nidra is there's a very clear intention. And as I say, it starts out with a bit of an explanation. So there's a very clear intention that really the purpose of all of yoga, the ultimate aim of all of yoga, is to know thyself. Every sage of every wisdom tradition in some way or another directs us to know that, or to do that, to come to some kind of understanding of what the true nature of being. But many yoga practices, especially the way it's presented in the Western world, they're doing it to relieve tension, or because they got a bad back, or because they need to do something where there's strength and flexibility or something of that nature. It's a much lesser goal. And not that there's anything wrong with these things. Clearly all these things have their place. But the ultimate practice of yoga, what it's really all about, the aim of yoga, is to understand the true nature of being. And so it can build on the Shavasana, which is, again, something that's typically done as a recuperative pose at the end of a physical yoga practice, or even at the end of a period of pranayama, the breathing exercises, or maybe even a meditative session, so that you can have a transition where you're simply lying down and resting, and after that period of rest and restoration, then you're ready to go on with your other daily activities. Yoga Nidra differs in that it is much more than that, and that its aim is much more associated with the originators of yoga, what their intentions were from the very beginning. Those people who originated yoga practices, they'd say that mankind had lost their harmony and there was lots of suffering. And so they presented yoga as a means to relieve suffering and a means of understanding the true nature of being, because they say that this is really the only problem. The only problem is not knowing the true nature of who and what you are. And if you do not know, and then imagine, just to take this in another direction, imagine if some imposter came and behaved as you, and in all aspects of your life, even including your dreams, you had this imposter behaving as you. that would be a really challenging set of circumstances to live an authentic life when someone is going around impersonating you. Well, that's the case for the vast majority of human beings. The reason that these sages direct us to know thyself is because very few people actually understand the true nature of being. They have a misunderstanding as to who and what they are, and then they act from that misunderstanding like an imposter, going around acting on behalf of who they truly are. And clearly there's a conflict. And the sages say, well, that's really the source of suffering. So to resolve that suffering, they gave a prescription, and the prescription is these yoga practices.
You're going to be teaching a course.
These yoga practices.
You're going to be teaching a course in Halifax, Nova Scotia here. I think it's when it tell us when that is. Give us some details about the course and what you hope to accomplish in this course. What can people expect to attain?
Okay. Actually, I do Yoga Nidra from time to time at different places, but there's one that's scheduled for next month. It's on March 16th at the Breathing Space Yoga Center on Coburg. It's just near Dalhousie University. It's not far from where we are right here. In that building where the Zen Tea Cafe is, right on the corner of...
it's in Oxford?
Oxford and Coburg, right?
Yeah.
That professional building there. And so what I'll present is something similar to what you hear me speaking about presently. I'll present Yoga Nidra. Now, it's set up with the intention, so we'll give some understanding as to what that intention is. Formally, it's called a sankalpa. It has two parts to it, a resolve and an intention. We resolve to remain relaxed yet alert. So although this practice does approximate deep sleep, which is something that might happen, some people may actually fall asleep. If that happens, that happens. But as best we can, from the beginning, we state clearly that there's a resolve to remain awake yet relaxed. So relaxed yet alert. And then, as I was speaking earlier, what I said is the ultimate aim of yoga is to understand the true nature of being. Well, the beauty of Yoga Nidra is this is a means of directly experiencing the true nature of being. The way that it happens is through relaxation. And someone like me who is trained in helping people to relax and let go, what I do is through my voice and through the way that we set the class up through the exercises at the beginning and through setting the body up in a way that it's comfortable, and then through my general direction of walking through the body and helping you to direct attention to certain body parts and releasing any tension or residues of tension that might be there, then it's a practice of letting go and relaxing deeper and deeper, and at the same time allowing oneself to still maintain an awareness, so that quality of being relaxed yet alert is there. And then what is experienced is this taste of authentic being.
You've been a yoga teacher in the city for, what, 25, 30 years?
It's going back a while. I started here in 85. The yoga practices started before that in the earlier mid-70s. But I've been teaching in Halifax and other places since 1985.
Let's talk about the connection between, I know who your teachers are, Iyengar, Dr. Jean Klein, and just create the connection then with Nidra Yoga.
Okay. Well, my first introduction to yoga practices were with BKS Iyengar. I'm from Newfoundland originally and studied there with a teacher that had a connection with the university there. But she taught out of her home. Her name is Lisa Schwartz. She currently lives in Toronto and still teaches. But she, like me, somewhere along the way, moved away from Iyengar Yoga. Now, I shouldn't maybe make that so brief, because it was a large part of my yoga practices. For 15 years, I studied Iyengar Yoga intensely with many teachers in North America and in India with the Iyengar family and with BKS Iyengar himself. So, I have an enormous debt that I owe to BKS Iyengar and the Iyengar family and all of the Iyengar teachers that I studied with over these years for setting up a foundation that allowed me to enjoy robust health and well-being. It's a tremendously beneficial practice. Yet for me, and just maybe it's my personality or whatever it is, there was something lacking in Iyengar yoga. And maybe it was, in a certain way, not so much that it was lacking, but how I came to it. That because it made so much sense intellectually, I remained at a very intellectual level with all of my yogic practices and studies, apart from the practices on the mat. When I was studying other things like the works of Jiddu Krishnamurti and people that he was associated with, like David Bohm, and any works that I would read, I would intellectualize these and have, a clear geometric understanding of the nature of things, but I wasn't really living them. So I started looking around. And in the looking around, I was very fortunate that the person that I came in contact with was Jean Klein. And the instant that I met Jean Klein, in a certain way, even before I met him, the questions and the quality of the way that I was practicing and the understanding that I had immediately changed. And it had to do with the nature of his presence. It wasn't so much anything that he taught me, but what fell away on meeting him, that quality of presence. And so there was, in a certain way, a bit of a conflict, because what I had studied up until that time made a whole lot of sense. And now there's something that can't be intellectualized, but it has that feeling of there's a genuineness here that really speaks to me. So something about the presence and the quality of being around Jean Klein was there undeniably for me, and I knew that this is my teacher. And so by being with him, I had to find this way to resolve the things that I understood intellectually and the things that I couldn't explain at all, but was clearly feeling something that is very worthwhile associated with this man's way of being and what he was sharing with me through his presence. There was that quality of teaching and understanding. And that's when I understood that through my yoga practices, it was in a certain way available to me through that pose that we just talked about, Shavasana, that there was a hint always in the Shavasana that that quality of profound relaxation and that certain joy that was there associated with those relaxation and restorative poses like Shavasana, I intuitively knew that there's something connected to the way that Jean Klein's presence was affecting me that was available through that pose, Shavasana. So that led me to extend the Shavasana studies and discover Yoga Nidra. And the combination of, again, studying with Iyengar teachers and now other teachers from other branches of yoga, I was exposed to more relaxation activities, Shavasana and Shavasana-like activities, and discovered Yoga Nidra through some of these folks. One person particularly that kind of made a bridge for me was Richard Miller, who had also studied with Jean Klein and had also studied yoga, and he found that Yoga Nidra was a way that, again, made that bridge between other practices of yoga and then the authentic nature of being that was represented by Jean Klein and Jean Klein's teachings.
I think Richard Miller's website, is it iRest?
He currently calls it iRest today.
Probably iRest.com. Or just look up Richard
and I
Miller
think
and
he
iRest.
uses the word non-dual. I think like in one of his websites, it was a non-dual yoga.
Yeah, nondual.com actually.
Yeah.
He's had that website.
He's had that for some time. Yeah.
Yeah, Richard's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, he's another one of those folks that we owe a debt of gratitude to, because I clearly had the intuition and things. He, in terms of the timeline, he clearly had the same insight. He just had it before I did. And we both ended up exploring Yoga Nidra for similar reasons and similar motivations.
Yeah, Yoga Nidra, really, you made it clear it's a natural extension of the yoga that you studied and that you came to appreciate through Jean Klein.
Yes. So one sees my personal history, you can see there are these kind of graduations of starting out yoga in a very physical way that made a whole lot of sense and it's geometrically correct. And then there is a clear understanding that it's not yet complete, and so still continuing exploring in some way or another, and then coming upon something which intuitively you know that this has the ring of truth to it, that connection with Jean Klein. And then the motivation to want to be able to communicate this in some way or another to other human beings, because you know how beneficial all of this stuff is. And so that naturally led into some way of packaging this in a way that can be presented to others for their benefit.
You mentioned the word presence, and we're going to be talking to Jen Pierre-Rich in a couple of minutes, and she'll be talking about that. And so we're just going to play some music, and then we'll be back with Jen Pierre-Rich. That's a little music by Prasad, a group from Toronto. Jen Pierre-Rich, are you anywhere within the sound of my voice?
I am here. Hello, Jerry.
Okay.
Hi, James. How are you?
Hi, Jen.
Good to hear you. How's things in Atlanta?
Well, we survived snowpocalypse. It was pretty intense here for a while. So you heard on the news. Atlanta was quite a mess for a while, but we've made our way out of it, and we're pulling ourselves together now.
Well, it's only the apocalypse. You'll survive.
Jen, as we're looking out the window here, the snow is just beginning to fall.
Yeah, see, that would create mass pandemonium here in Atlanta if that were happening right now.
I can imagine it would.
Well, now you have a story to tell, Jen, and I'm not totally aware of it. So where do we begin? Just tell us about your life right now and how you got there.
Okay. Yeah, it's a story. We all have them. And I was born in 1973 in California, and I was at 6 months old diagnosed with stage 3 neuroblastoma, which is a kind of cancer. And in the 70s, they didn't really know how to treat babies with cancers, so they did very crude treatments, which basically were adult doses of radiation on infants. And some of us that were in the early 70s and diagnosed with cancer as children lived, which, of course, created a lot of problems in my body. Radiation damage is pretty, catastrophic. So I think for me, I think a lot of people have the first 3 years of life where they're pretty much, they have a sense of oneness as an infant with a mother, and then slowly we start to divide out and become a me in the world as a young child, and we start to become this me in the world. And but I didn't really have that. I think as an infant, I immediately created an internal world and an external world on the outside, and I did that because I needed to for survival. So I didn't really have that sense of oneness even with my own mother, and my internal world was pretty dramatic and real to me, and also very painful. And living in a body that was, pretty devastated by the radiation, I created a lot of stories around the cancer, a lot of identity stories around it, and it wasn't until I was 37, 3 years ago, that I finally met this false sense of myself and presence. And I was very addicted to that false sense of self. And so for me, I didn't have a teacher. I was really on my own for the first time in my life. I started doing self-inquiry and pretty much made myself insane, crazy with self-inquiry, trying to find, who am I? What is this? What is this that I'm dragging around? What is all this pain that I've carried my whole life? And it was about a 6-month process for me, but on the flip side of that journey, of that kind of that self-induced psychosis with self-inquiry, I met myself again as I have been my whole life for the first time. And it was very transformative. You can imagine I went my whole life, really deeply hating myself and hating this body, and suddenly, it's like, oh my God, I don't have to carry all that weight. And wow, life is really incredible. And so this last 3 years of my life, since being here in presence and knowing myself as I am, it's been just the most, I've lived more this last 3 years than I did in the entire 37 previously. So now life for me is just about, creativity and writing and sharing this experience that I had, and kind of being just a messenger for people that are going through, disease and disability, that there are other ways to live rather than through the images that come with being a person that survived a lot of physical problems.
And at some point, and I was talking to James earlier about this, James, maybe you can jump in. At some point, disability becomes ability.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Well, yeah, I recently, I had another surgery. I'm fused 100% with titanium rods from my neck to my pelvis because the radiation damage destroyed my spinal cord. And in November, I had another surgery to basically reconfigure all the metal in there. And so this surgery was totally different than any other surgery I had experienced previously because I was very present. I mean, I'm here. And so in this experience, it was a lot different because for the first time in my life, I was able to be a friend to this body and to be here as a presence for this body rather than really just laying on layers of hate and why is this happening and why me and all of those stories that I, carried. Not only does the body have a lot to deal with just being a body and having all of these, particular physical problems, but then I'm like throwing on all this shame and hate and why on top of it. So this time with this last surgery, I was just really impressed with how well the body healed when I was able to get out of the way from it. You know what I mean? So yeah, the disability becomes ability in that I'm able now to be present as a friend to the body in a way that I was never able to be before. So I can definitely speak to that for sure.
You mentioned your self-inquiry, and did you do it all yourself? Or it seems like you did, even though you had a hard time.
Well, what happened was I had carried such a false sense of myself for 37 years, and it was really, I just hated myself. I hated myself deeply, and I had started reading. I never even heard of non-duality. I never even heard of any of this, and so I got a book of Leonard Jacobson, and I read it, and he talked about doing inquiry, and I just had a feeling that there was something there. I just knew that maybe people knew something that I didn't. And at the time, I was on a very intense pain medication, fentanyl, which is like stronger than heroin. And I was on it at a pain clinic. And my life at that time, 3 years ago, was perfect on from outside appearances. I had everything, a great marriage, a wonderful home, a great family. But on the inside, I was a mess. And so one night, I just lost it. And I was laying outside naked on some rocks outside, just wailing. 37 years of absolute shame had come to a head. And I thought, either I'm going to die or I'm going to pull myself together and I'm going to figure this out. And so I just kind of surrendered at that moment. And I started to detox off the fentanyl and detox from myself at the same time. And it was very powerful. But I think perhaps the energy of the detox from the chemicals. So every time I would have a thought that would come up, it would be a shame or pain or story about my life, I would bring it into presence and say, what is this true? And I'd follow that trail into nothingness, and I'd continually find myself as nothingness. But when you do that again and again, the brain just kind of wigs out. The brain likes answers and it likes things to be organized. But when you begin to start to meet that in an organized way, you really kind of go crazy. And I didn't really know if I would come back. The more I dug into myself, the worse it got, the sicker I got. And luckily my spouse was just able to kind of give me space. Like, she would ask me a question like, do you want dinner? And I was doing inquiry with simple questions. It was just crazy. And so finally, I had just gotten down to the dregs of myself. I was like, I just didn't have anything left. And I was laying outside underneath some trees, these trees that I had really confessed my whole life to, done all this inquiry with, these trees that were my friends and they were my gurus. And I said, if there's anything left inside of me, anything left that needs to go, I surrender to it. You've seen the work I've done. Just please release me from any last lingering bits. And it wasn't right then, but about a few weeks after that, I started to come back. And it wasn't that I came back, it was just that I was here. But I started to acclimate this absolute presence that I knew myself to be with the relative living. And since then, it's been night and day for me. I still have thoughts that are painful, and I still have a body that experiences daily pain, but I don't suffer from either one of those in any way like I did before. So it's been a very powerful transformation for me, for sure.
Yeah, we're going to do a more extensive interview another time. We'll talk without any time limit. But for now, we just have a few minutes.
It'd be nice at some point to hear about Jen's creative endeavors.
Yeah, what I want to ask Jen is I'm listening to you. I'm sitting here, my eyes closed, I'm just listening, and what I'm hearing is that you have a lot to share. You have a lot to share. I think you want to speak about this and reach out. Is that right?
Coming through. Yeah, something's coming through. The writing, I wrote 2 books in the last 3 years. Something happened. And I was always, I think, a good writer. I think words would flow, creativity. I was, an artist. I was always a creative person, but of course that was always coming through the mind. And then as soon as I came here in presence, man, everything just blew up, and art began to flow through me, and writing began to flow through me. Messages about, how I was, prior in the mind and how it is in presence began to flow through. So there seems to be something very deep inside that wants to speak and reach out to people who are suffering, to say, you don't have to live that way. And I don't really have the answers as to what way it is to get out of that, but I definitely can say that it's possible, because I was just as messed up as person as you can get. And so if I can stumble upon this and really know myself here as love, and know you all as love, and as this one presence, then by God, anybody can do it. So yeah, I think there's definitely something deeply here that wants to share, for sure.
Other than your friends and people that know you, have you reached out beyond your circle?
No.
Well, other than this.
Kind of happening. Things are just, I have 2 books. They're both on friendsandpresence.com. They're for free download. I wrote those freely, just as a friend, as a message to anybody who, kind of is going through this. And really, things are just unfolding. This interview is here. I think that's really groovy, and I think meeting more people who are in presence is just amazing and awesome. I feel very honored to be here.
Well, Jenna, it's good to meet you indirectly, and I'm sure that Jerry will arrange a situation where we'll get to hear more from you at some point in the future.
I look forward to that, James. Thanks so much for sharing, too.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Jen, I want to talk to you some more, and I think that a lot of people want to hear from you. A lot of people will meet you, and you're going to get your word and your approach, your story out there to a lot of people.
And the other thing that I'd like to say, Jen, is on behalf of everybody else, thank you in advance.
That's a good point. Thank you.
Well, it's very touching. I feel you all right here in the heart so much. Thank you so much, Jerry, for this call.
Thank you. Okay, Jen, we're going to say so long. We'll be talking to you again probably in a few days. We'll do a nice long interview and stuff. Just spend some time together.
Look forward to it. Have a good day.
Thanks,
okay.
Jen.
Bye, Jen. Yeah, that was Jen Pierre-Rich talking to us from Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
Powerful.
powerful, very touching. What a beautiful being.
Yeah, and it's a great privilege to be able to host that kind of conversation. Someone like that who's just coming out public.
Yes, and those of us who have challenges in our lives, we talk about some of the nature of some of the inquiry, how challenging that can be. But to me, it's almost unimaginable to have had all those physical challenges in addition to wanting to explore authentic being. And so, what an extraordinary person Jen is to have had that extreme challenge from infancy to age 37, as she just described, all those ordeals that she's been through, and still, like as recent as just this past November, undergoing surgeries and things. But clearly, the quality of the way that she speaks, she is somebody who's tasted something that's very worthwhile and is a great representation of it. So she's definitely got an enormous amount to share, and we all benefit from the very fact that she's sharing this.
Let's celebrate with some Michael Jackson, and then we're going to come back with Chadwick Johnson in Sacramento. That wasn't Michael Jackson. This is Michael Jackson. Hello, Chad.
Hey, Jerry. How you doing?
Speaking to Chadwick Johnson. We're good here. Chadwick is in Sacramento, and just did you listen to the call with Jen?
Yes, man. What an amazing individual. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great interview. You should be honored.
We're sitting here and here with James. Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Yeah, I'm like, really? You should have interviewed me first, dude. And then let Jim.
Yeah, you don't want to follow that, do you?
No, I don't want to follow that. So,
but your comments are going to be great. So I mean, you've already made great comments. Just you don't have to say anything,
Cool. Yeah, but I do want to say that I was very touched by Jen, and I'm so glad she accepted my Facebook friend invitation, and I'm going to stay in touch with her and listen. I look forward to her interview, the more in-depth interview that you have with her, and I'm going to follow her because she definitely has, not only her story, but just, her presence, her truth, her honesty. It's just a pleasure. I'm so glad I listened in, and I'm a part of this show.
Yeah, you talk about
show.
Yeah, you talk about presence, and we don't really have to say much, do we?
Man, I was like you. You said you were listening with your eyes closed. I just kind of listened, and when you listen from a place of non-duality. When you listen from that place where you're just still, it's as if, you're speaking to yourself. There is no separation. So it's just like when I used to listen to Muji videos, and I still do sometimes, I don't listen as though there's another person named Muji that's speaking. I just listen as if the universe is speaking to the universe. Just get out of the way, and just such an amazing experience, just unbelievable.
This is James, Chad. Yeah, I very much appreciate the way you spoke about that. When one listens in the way you just described, the quality of it is that the words are received, and we're just simply available, and there is just the experience of the listening, the hearing, and there is no separation in that experience. As compared to the way that many people have been conditioned, in that conditioning, often there's a grasping and going out to the words, and it's not really listening. That's more reacting. But the way you just described the listening is a very quality to it, that open, receptive quality of receiving what the universe is presenting.
Yeah, because, even though we speak to each other and we're here for each other, non-duality is not, it's not like it's not conceptual. It's actuality. It's like there's not duality. There's only one thing. And in order to experience that, you have to just be still. And then everything still unfolds. Like even as I speak here, I have both the sense that I'm speaking to another and also the sense that words are just flowing. And
yes, exactly.
It's just that just takes non-duality out of the conceptual realm and just and brings it to the experiential realm, where we are all one thing, even though there seems to be others, and you can feel it, you can feel it in the presence when you look from that perspective, and listen from that perspective.
Mm-hmm. That's beautifully said, because that's the nature of non-duality, as you've already pointed to, that it is experiential. Conceptually, we do use terms like non-duality to be able to speak about that which is not two or that which is not separate. Yet there has to be some kind of translation from that conceptualization to a quality of presence being that is experiential in nature, so that there is a truth to it and it's not just some idea.
Chad?
Exactly. And, when certain people speak, it just seems to, the universe seems to, demand that you listen from that perspective in a way. When I was listening to Jen speak, I disappeared. There was no other, it was just these words flowing from the universe. And I just appreciate her telling her story. I appreciate you and Jerry doing what you guys do, and I'm just honored to be a part of this.
Yeah, it's hard to, you don't really want to say anything, but you sort of have to. All right, well, talk about your work. Talk about the Way Project, Chad.
Yeah, the Way Project is just the way that I do my work. I basically put on workshops. I teach mindfulness. I put on mindfulness workshops, and I call them mindfulness workshops, but basically, I'm just teaching people how to quiet their mind and discover their true nature. And I just have all kind of exercises and discussions and answer questions, and then I get invited to speak here and there. I speak at detox facilities, and it's just such a passion of mine to share this message of non-duality or truth. That I just do it in whatever way I can.
I've been reading about mindfulness, And do you find that, do you have to be careful about the term mindfulness? Is it becoming a little bit commercialized? Are you having to kind of dance around that a little bit?
You know, I teach with reckless abandon. You know,
Good for you.
I don't care what people think or what I just, as long as I'm speaking from truth, you know. I use the word mindfulness because it is more accepted. But when you come to my workshop, I never studied mindfulness. I've never been trained in mindfulness. I don't have any mindfulness certification. You know, a mindfulness expert may come to my workshop and say that I'm doing it all wrong, and that's not my concern. I'm just, you know, mindfulness seems to be a term that people won't throw their guards up against, you know, and you know, I just I don't get caught up in words, really, you know. So whatever people are expecting when they come, they get what they get. You know, in a way.
I loved how you talked about, when we did a longer interview a few days ago, I loved how you talked about passion. So it seems to me that what you said, I asked you about how do you get around mindfulness, and what I heard you saying was, look, you know, it's your passion that burns through. It's not the word mindfulness or... Yeah. I mean, it's just like when I was kind of like Jen. When I had my spiritual awakening, I had never heard of anything called non-duality or Advaita or anything. This happened to me. I mean, and then afterwards, during my spiritual search, trying to figure out what happened to me, I learned of all these different terms, which really kind of led me on more of a search. You know, if I would have just accepted what happened to me, I could have just skipped the journey, you know? But that's a part of it, I guess. You know, after you have a spiritual awakening, the ego wants to know, you know, what happened to me? Am I God?
Yes.
You know, I was trying to figure out, was I the second coming of Jesus or not? You know, this was just completely out of the blue for me, you know?
Yeah.
So that, the fact that, you know, it happens automatically, and then we attach words to it afterwards. We attach words and concepts to it afterwards to describe what it is. That tells me that when I go teach, I don't necessarily have to have any, the right words or anything. No one, you know, there's no proper way to teach truth, you know. As long as you're speaking from your experience and speaking from the truth of what you are, you can call it non-duality, you can call it mindfulness, you can call it hip-hop, you know, you can call it whatever you want to call it.
You said it very well, Chad, that, you know, there's no particular way that you have to teach. The truth is that in a certain way we don't teach at all. What Jerry was pointing to, it's your passion, the quality of your presence, and, you know, wanting to be authentic and to share with people. And then, as you said earlier, with reckless abandon, well, you're honoring something that it's, you know, not really something that can be conceptualized, but you know the taste of it, and you know what it is that you want to represent, and so your very presence, your very being, and the passionate quality of that presence is the teaching.
Yeah, and you know, you just trust. There's a you know, I appreciate when Jen said she was, you know, when she was doing her self-inquiry, she kind of felt like she was going crazy, you know, and then, you know, that subsided, and now she'd healed, and she feels like she's present, you know, and the intelligence that took her through that is the same intelligence that's flowing through these words at this moment. And it's the same intelligence that flows through my words when I'm teaching a workshop or anything that I'm doing. So I don't trust in my own talent or my own natural abilities. I have 100% trust in that intelligence that has me here, you know?
Yes, good.
Chad, you mentioned hip-hop, and you equated it with truth. It's pretty radical. And the only other person I know who's done that is Justin Miles, who I'm trying to get on interview, but he's pretty elusive. And I also know you're a hip-hop artist, and we have about 2 minutes left. Are you going to lay some rhymes on us? Did I use the right lingo there? I mean, I don't know. Is that hip hop
There you
language?
go. I appreciate the effort. Sure, man. Sure, I got some rhymes for you.
All right, man.
Let me jump into that role right
Chadwick Johnson. Oh, that's not your... Do you have a name, like a DJ name? Or?
Oh, I go by Bones.
Bones.
My hip-hop people out there, they know me as Bones. So
We got Bones there
Bones. Yeah.
on CKDU Hip-Hop Radio.
Y'all ready for this?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Attention, fellow sentient beings. This is a message from the unseen manifested into your dreams. We are one light like the sun with infinite beams, but our sense of separation seems to complicate the simplest things. Now, what is the distance between you and the supreme, all-knowing, omnipotent being? Closer than intimacy, closer than the stitch in the seam, closer than the fish in the stream. Call this my metaphysical monologue. If not, well, you could call it the Bones Lyrical Molotov Cocktail. You could download it yourself, or I could send it to your Hotmail. Because to whom much is given, much is required. This is hip-hop preservation for the people in the congregation or up in the choir. And they listen because it's nothing but fire.
Hey.
Yeah.
Yay,
Wow.
Bones!
Thank you
And
very
that's
much.
Bones. Wow. Thank you.
I appreciate
Chad,
you.
thank you very much for adding to this show. It would be difficult for someone to add to this show, but someone like yourself could do it. So,
Well, I appreciate the invite, and very nice to meet you, James, and I look forward to the future with you guys.
Nice to meet you,
Yeah.
Chad. Thanks.
we'll talk to you,
All right.
Chad. Thanks.
Okay.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, that was Chadwick Johnson from Sacramento. He's married. He has 5 kids. What a show this has been, James.
Yes. Seems
Yeah.
very short and sweet, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's, what did you
we had
think?
2 incredible guests.
2 great guests.
Yeah.
Well, you're a third guest.
Yeah, but when you it's hard when you have someone the quality of Jen and Chad. I'm honored to be in the same show with them.
Yeah. Well, they're coming from such a passion.
Yeah.
Um,
What I appreciated in both, the thing I saw in both, is the beauty. That quality of passion that you're referring to, but there's beauty in their words, there's beauty that you can feel in their presence. The way Chad spoke about the universe and the oneness, that quality of listening. And then Jen speaking truthfully, that way of being that she represents, and the quality of her understanding through the experiences of her life to be where she is now and to be in a place where she wants to share that with others. We're so fortunate to be on the same radio program with these people.
yeah, and it's a tremendous privilege just to be able to, make the room, make the space for
Yeah.
people to bring people in, and yeah.
What I liked mostly, you could tell how beautiful this was with the quality of these people, is both you and I, who can be quite chatty, were stilled. And there were periods there we just speechless.
Yeah.
That's how wonderful it was.
Well, we better be speechless now because we have to go. So I want to thank you, James, for being here, and I want to thank Jen Pierre-Rich. I want to thank Chadwick Johnson and CKDU and everybody on the Non-Duality Highlights group on Facebook. Jen Pierre-Rich can be found on Facebook. Her name is spelled JenPeerRich. And Chadwick Johnson's website is thewayproject.org. James, your website, of course, is beingyoga.com. The website for this show is nonduality.net. I'm Jerry Katz, and I'll say goodbye to everybody.